Tonight, we have the really wonderful pleasure of welcoming Dr. Carolyn Woo to be with us. Carolyn is the president and CEO of Catholic Relief Services, the international humanitarian agency of the Catholic community in the United States. Working in international development and human caring for human beings, why does this feel so compelling to you in the work of Catholic Relief, in the work of the church more broadly?
Yeah, because I think that in our work we see the multiplication of so many problems. We see the consequences of climate change. We have been seeing it for a while, all these emergencies, all these extreme storms. We have seen islands drowning. We have seen climate warming and how it affects agriculture in Africa, in Asia, in Central America. We have seen crops like coffee, which cannot be grown. And at the same time, we've seen so much conflict. And we have seen the effects of poverty and inequality. And we know of the number of children who are not going to school. That's easily 100 million children. What will happen to these children? And I actually have a little sense of that because I grew up in Hong Kong next to China when the whole Cultural Revolution and the Red Guards didn't go to school. There was a whole generation of kids who were my age who didn't go to school. Some of them eventually went back to school in their 20s, but there's a generation which is left behind. There's also a lot of youth who are not employed. There's a lot of weapons in the world today. In Kenya, it's not unusual, particularly when there is political turmoil, for one group to bring in a lot of weapons, automatic weapons into a community, and from 2 to 6 o'clock just distribute these guns to teenagers, and they cause a ruckus, and then they collect the guns again and go to another community. So we actually see all the consequences of these problems. And there will not be enough new resources to deal with these issues, whether they're climate or wars or human trafficking. We just have to minimize these problems. Absolutely. So we are founded because our role, and it's a tremendous privilege, is to make God real in a world where hope and friendship, empathy and kindness, generosity, those are the things that keep us going as a community, and sometimes it's hard for people to really believe it. Our role is to say, no, those things are very much alive because God is very much present. And we are just, the hands and feet which give manifestation to God's love. And we serve all on the basis of need, not on the basis of creed. So for us, it's a tremendous privilege because I feel like we are really bringing God's love to the world, that our work is enabled by the Holy Spirit. I often tell my staff, I don't understand why we would set low dreams or low aspirations, because we're not working by our own power. We're working by the power of the Holy Spirit. And then working to serve people who need so much. So a lot of times it's not because we don't work hard or we don't care, but sometimes we look at our own limitations and we forget that we are not working by our own power. And so that's what it means to me. He's a priest, he's older than me, and he says he needs 7 hours of sleep to be civil, and he needs 8 hours of sleep to be Christian. And I would say that some of those things are things that a leader needs to recognize, because there's no point in being that version of yourself that leaves behind emotional damage. But of course now with Pope Francis, every denomination claims him. There are lots of people, non-Catholics, going to the Vatican and getting their pictures taken and organizing meetings with the Pope. And so on. So now people probably, there's a little envy in terms of us being Catholic. But I would say the scandal, not a lot of effect on us. I think what is more difficult is the division in the United States community, the division between people who are quote unquote pro-life and pro-justice. There's just this division, and I think it follows the political divisions. And it is the most ridiculous split. You cannot split pro-life and pro-social justice. You know, they go together. And I would say that split actually creates more challenges for us than the abuse scandal. So I decided I didn't want to be like my mother. Her mother actually had her feet bound and was one of 4 wives. I have 3 sisters. None of them went to college. 2 did not finish high school. So I think the first thing I felt sometimes, I remember my first ride being picked up in a limo, was that the limo was picking me up as me and not as somebody's wife, which in a Chinese culture, the only way a woman would be treated that well is you as the wife of some. So it was the first time where I came to an understanding that, the feeling of sort of being a woman and being recognized for those achievements. But otherwise, I was not very conscious of the fact that I was an only woman, because I was more conscious of the fact that I was an immigrant and I depended on fellowships for my tuition. So I would work really hard because I never wanted to lose my scholarships. And I went into the habit, I always over-prepared. I would study for exams 3 days before they're due. When I was teaching, I would have 3 times as much material as I really needed in a class. It was all out of sort of like, I may fail, I may lose this, I may not get tenure. So my journey was not as a woman, but more sort of like, what do I need to do in order to secure that security? Then I went into situations where I became the only woman in different things, like the first woman to chair our accreditation for business school, the AACSB. And so there were not a lot of other women to speak to at that point. But I often tell women this, and then I went on to corporate boards. I was nominated and went on corporate boards, and I was so different than most corporate board members. I don't belong to the opera board, the zoo board. I don't golf. I could not talk sports. So I was very much, in some ways, an outsider. But I would always tell women that it's okay, learn to feel comfortable as an outsider, learn to understand that people want you there, not because you're an insider, but you must have something to contribute. Do the homework that leads to that contribution. When you have a point to make your point, and don't wait around to see whether people agree, disagree, thought you were great, thought you were dumb. Just let that go. Don't make points just to use airtime, and make points because you really believe in it. And so learn how to be the outsider. I actually now say being an insider is overrated. And most people, for some strange reason, feel like they're an outsider. Everybody understands the part where they don't quite belong to that group. So someday I probably will write an article, a book about being the outsider and enjoying it, and that is a universal phenomenon. So I think being a woman in the church and doing all this was just a continuation of the journey I never asked for the jobs that I'm in. I was happy at Purdue doing my thing. Then Notre Dame came and said, I'm not going to go. There's no reason I should go to Notre Dame. I'm perfectly happy here. My career had a lot of momentum at that point. I loved my bosses. And it was a very large Catholic community. But one day I went to Mass, and when I came out, it was very clear. that it was time to go. It's the same thing, you know, a hard decision to go to CRS. So I never asked for the positions that I've been in. Once I am in it, and again, just a sense that there's a set of responsibilities, there's a set of, I don't want to let people down. I understand what is at stake. I think sometimes for people to also remember at different level of positions, you have a panel of levers that only you have access to. And you have to use that panel of levers because there is a set of people who are counting on you for the organization to be effective. So that's being a woman. Get used to being an outsider and work really hard and be generous and take people along with you.